Today I'd like to tell the story of three stones. These stones were used at three different times to render the blank area you see here. In case you don't recognize it, this is an early rendering of the Barcelona Pavilion, a building hailed by Peter Behrens as perhaps the most important building of the century. In winter of 1928, Mies van der Rohe was looking for materials at a stone supplier in Hamburg, Germany, and saw a huge slab of onyx doré, considered one of the world's rarest and costliest marbles. Popular accounts indicate that the stone came from a quarry in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco. The onyx was to be used for some decorative vases on an ocean liner. Mies, his father a stonemason, saw the huge specimen, grabbed a hammer, and expertly hit it directly in the center to produce a thin sample. He had the piece polished and then bought the onyx on the spot, out of his own pocket. At the time, Mies was considering his design for the German pavilion for the International Exposition at Barcelona, and he decided to use it for the pavilion instead. The previously unrendered surface in the perspective shown earlier, attributed to Mies's own hand, would now bear this beautiful material. This selection was not insignificant. Mies allowed the size of the stone to determine the overall height of the pavilion at 3.1 meters and to mark its ceremonial center, referred to as the throne room, where the King and Queen of Spain would sign a golden book on May 19, 1929, in a ceremony to open the pavilion. Each side of the wall was made of four massive slabs, 7.7 feet by 5.1 feet and about 1 inch thick, with two solid caps on each end. The distinctive golden tone of the onyx contributed to the symbolism of the throne room, paired with a black velour carpet and a red velvet curtain for the three colors of the German flag. Historians and theorists suggest that the selection of this material was critical to Mies's design for the freestanding wall. For Mies, this plane was rendered as a deep, three-dimensional surface through the polished stone providing significant reflections. It's worth noting that for a pavilion that faced tight budget constraints, requiring some of the outer walls to receive a faux finish on their backsides in lieu of stone cladding, the onyx alone represented 20% of the entire construction cost of the building. Because of this, it strikes me, as it has others, that although Mies claimed that modern architecture demanded new, industrially produced standard building components, he heavily relied on the use of a precious material noted for its rarity and scarcity as the centerpiece of arguably his most significant work. In 1986, a group of architects completed the reconstruction of the pavilion, which stands to this day. This was a highly controversial move among the architectural establishment, sparking much debate about authenticity and originality, with critic Paul Goldberger emphatically asserting that the building is not supposed to exist. The original pavilion was dismantled less than a year after its completion, so its memory remained primarily through 16 photographs. The reconstruction team explicitly chose to view their task as completing the execution of the original architectural idea, not simply creating an exact reproduction of the 1929 iteration, which they saw as fraught with contingencies and limitations. The onyx was arguably the most important material of the whole pavilion. Stone is a natural material, of course, and replicating the exact texture, color, and veining of the original was impossible. The search for a similar material constituted the most novelesque episode in the entire process of reconstructing the pavilion. The team searched for a suitable replacement of the same immense size, traveling to quarries in Israel, Egypt, Brazil, and Pakistan. They finally found a source in an abandoned quarry in the Oran region of Algeria, which they believed to be the actual source of the original stone. In the reconstruction, the onyx pieces were arrayed in a distinctive pattern to produce symmetries. This effect, specific to the selected stone and not present in the original pavilion, created a kaleidoscopic effect, with the veining and reflections giving a three-dimensional depth to the material and the plane it defines. In 2021, I started designing a new iteration of the pavilion, in some ways perhaps a more perfect execution of Mies's original ambitions. My quest for selecting the stone for this wall was far less exotic. I traveled 1 mile from my home to the Lowe's on Perkins Road in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Directly on axis with the main entry is the Kitchen Design Center, showcasing the available options for countertops: quartzite, stone, solid surface, butcher block, and laminate. There are 6-inch square samples of each option. Although they sometimes run out of brochures, ample information is available on the web. I reviewed the available options, settling on quartz produced by Allen and Roth due to its consistency and relative approximation of the color and texture of onyx. These slabs come in 2 and 3 centimeter thicknesses with different levels of cost, A through E. The selected one is a D, so it is approximately $86 a square foot. In contrast, onyx can run up to $250 a square foot. Our global industries and supply chains are optimized to produce this type of predictability and accessibility, of which Mies could only dream in 1929. Yet I imagine that many of my colleagues would roll their eyes at the suggestion of cladding Mies's masterpiece with a manufactured stone from Lowe's that's commonly used in suburban kitchens across the United States. Which makes me wonder if the discipline understands that Mies didn't really mean what he said, and maybe the discipline has never really embraced this type of standardization either. Of course, it threatens the myth of the architect as an artist and a creative genius, endlessly supplying the unique, one-off, and the monumental for an in-crowd who can properly appreciate what we offer. Rather than being cynical about this, however, I see it instead as an opportunity for us to realize what Mark Wigley suggests architects are actually fascinated by. He called it the irreducible strangeness of building. It is that quality, I believe, that has transfixed our discipline, including myself, on this temporary pavilion for nearly 100 years since its creation, and it continues to inspire me today.